Bird got hands. Bird got hands. Bird got hands. Lugia, the Silver Guardian of the Oceans. They're arguably one of the most popular legendary Pokémon in the franchise, and considering it's a whale bird with big meaty claws, that's an achievement. Pokémon has had nearly 30 years to cook up some good lore for this thing, and I believe, well, they cooked something at least. I think Lugia's lore problems come from just confusion. How did a heavily water-themed Pokémon not get the water type? How did a movie mascot trailblaze the first new generation of Pokémon?
But now you have been promoted.
I cannot stress enough, how does Bird have hands? I have to do something. To TLDR Lugia's canon lore, 700 years ago there were two towers in Ecruteak City, the Bell Tower, home of Ho-Oh, and the Brass Tower, home of Lugia. These were symbols of peace between Pokemon and people, with the Brass Tower being where Pokemon awakened, and the Bell Tower where they would rest. 550 years later, Lugia is rudely awoken by a storm that would strike down the Brass Tower, burning it to the ground for 3 days. Lugia spent those days summoning gales to stop the flames, and if you know anything about fanning flames, you don't do that. After making it worse, Lugia called for rain that would finally put the fire to rest. With the fire gone and 3 cat dogs dead, Ho-Oh finally decides to show up and revives the 3 dead Pokemon. We'll get to them another time. But for now, Lugia plummets itself into the Whirl Island, probably out of shame, making its nest there. According to further legend, 2 countries once fought for the island, and in retaliation, because without 30 days notice this is an illegal eviction, Lugia summoned, ironically enough, lightning to split the island into 4, hiding itself even deeper. With both of the Guardians traumatized by violence and strife, only a trainer who is pure of heart and can touch the souls of Pokemon could bring them back to Johto. Now, I have some beef with these excuses. First of all, the Ecruteak story told here is actually from Pokémon Evolutions, a web anime series made for the 25th anniversary that elaborates on every generation's in-game lore. And that stuff about splitting the Whirl Islands, that's the lore we saw from Silva. You want to know what Lugia's original lore was in Gen 2? I'm so sorry. While it is very 90s JRPG to just have NPCs allude to a secret boss in a dungeon, that's not exactly what someone else got. This isn't Lugia's fault though. Lugia's design and concept process wasn't nearly as linear as legendary Pokemon we see today. We actually have a lot of insight into the design process for Lugia since it was designed for the movie Pokémon 2000, where it was better known as Pokémon X. Just gonna borrow that for a second. Gold and Silver's stories were never meant to be based around legendaries. Just like the first games, this story was going to be about exploring, with, albeit, some more traditionally Japanese themes and mysticism. Ho-Oh just so happened to already be the legendary, kind of like a new Mewtwo in these games, all while the movie team were playing about with their new OC. In an interview with Web Anime Style, the movie's chief writer, Takeshi Shudo, said he conceptualized Pokémon X as a creator of life on Earth, a feminine, motherly creature who was meant to symbolize the ocean's currents as we move through life. As the film outline was finalized, Pokémon X became Lugia, evolving more into a general guardian of the seas rather than a creator. While the movie wrapped development, Shudo wasn't aware that Lugia was actually going to be joining Ho-Oh in the new games, and was going to be the face of one of them. Over the years, and especially clumsily through the remakes, Pokémon have tried their best to create some lore that is completely disconnected from the anime movie. What that has meant though is that Lugia's connection to Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres? What connection? The first time the main games even acknowledged Lugia as part of the legendary birds was in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and that's just by getting 3 Kanto slates to get the one that lets you beat up Lugia in the first place. Those games didn't do a lot for us, but they did do that. So where did Shudo actually pluck Lugia from? To figure out Lugia's real-life counterparts, we need to first look at the source. The movie. Lugia's relationship with the legendary birds could potentially be related to these orbs from the altars featured in the movie. This harks to the stories of Ryujin, a Japanese dragon god who gifted tide jewels, pearls that had the ability to change the currents of the seas, to those it deemed worthy to protect them. Ha! So that's why Bird has hands. Bird is dragon. Oh my god, Bird is dragon. What's particularly fun about this reality is that I actually think there was more intent to Lugia's design than Shudo lets on in that interview. While it might not have been intentional from the start, in Feng Shui, the Chinese practice of balance and harmony, the phoenix, Feng Huang, is usually paired with a dragon, Long, whose Japanese incarnations would be called Ho-Oh and Yu. They are the most powerful energies amongst the celestial animals of feng shui, and are the yin and yang to marital bliss? I'm sure this is someone's fanfic, but it sure as hell isn't going to be mine. So we have ocean dragons and philosophy dragons. While some of you are fighting for this thing to be water type, I think I've got some other questions I'd like to ask Game Freak. Since I don't really have any stories to fully base Lugia's lore on this time, I guess I'll kick this can about until something happens. Oh, I have an idea. You know how Shudo wanted Lugia to be a motherly presence? Have you ever heard of the Halcyon Days? They're 14 days in winter where storms never occur. Legend says that while Alcyone, a woman who'd taken the form of a bird, long story, Zeus hates love, laid her eggs on a beach, while her father, and god of winds, Aeolus, guarded her and her nest. This might actually be a great starting point for me. Whoa! The tape. I love movie magic. Let's just pop that in and see what I did in those seconds. Isn't the passage of time so linear? Oh, it's starting. From shores near and far, the waves carry echoes from a crying guardian. They mourn the days where they could freely soar the skies, stretch their silver wings, and perch themselves atop a tower now ashed and charred. For 3 nights, hell raised it from the ground. For 3 days, they flew far with no home abound. The silver gale burrowed itself in their own shame, deep within the pools beneath the southernmost oceans. Through the currents, they swam deeper, hiding from the golden skies until their scales would dim into the dark tide. They were meant to be hailed as a protector. They were the silver light that would shine the luster of youth, laying their feather down unto the children of the city so that they could sleep tight, with blessings on their souls. They were offered bells that sang beautiful melodies, with monks praying throughout the floors of their nest. No songs could be sung under the sea. No fires could take dreams from sleep. Silver whispers took themselves from the deep-sea gales to the surface, a fortress of pools that would twirl and swirl, protecting the silver gale from ever having to hear of the fateful day. No trespasser to sow discord, and no thunder to shake their soul. These oceans were tranquil. They took the silver gale far from the memories that sizzled away still within their soul. When they closed their eyes, they heard the howls. When they slept at night, they were blinded by the flames. The silver gale was stirred, homeless, aimless. The ocean life took the gale in like their own. They cleaned their scales, they fluffed their feathers, and in turn, the gale would bring a calm to the currents. This was a privilege to the wildlife. This was a punishment to the gale, knowing their golden twin flew lone, tired from healing the lost. Over time, the oceans turned. Silver feathers found themselves on the sands of foreign shores, drawing in wanderers that would intend to turn the silver vagrant's peace. The first was the ice bird, a creature who would aim to freeze the tears that would pollute their cavern floor. The silver gale heard their concerns, but knew best to mourn their past, so their mistakes could be rectified. The ice bird listened, cried with the silver, and lay feather down to the ocean floor, comforting them, taking away turbulent winds that would disturb their mourning. To thank them, the silver gifted a cold azure pearl to the ice bird, promising that if their home was ever thawed, they would come. Then came the thunderbird, who sought to create havoc needlessly amongst the oceans. Their lightning would strike into the pools only to bring back the fears that tore down the heart of the silver gale. But this was not then. The ocean life that took them in needed to be protected. This was their home now. So they would cut the currents, splitting the island above with their emboldened wings, warning the thunderbird that this would not be their hunting ground. Though a foolish bird, the thunderbird respected power, and as a bargain and token to remind them of the silver's strength, they begged to learn this strength in exchange for freeing these seas from storms. The Silva gifted them a roaring topaz pearl, promising that if they were ever disturbed, they would come and bare their fangs once more. Finally came the Firebird. They would shine a sun so bright above the now bare skies that the silver gale would return to the surface. As they found their place in the skies, they were met with a blinding heat so blazing that it began to burn the ocean floor. The Silva called upon the gales that had once fanned the flames of their tower, now calling from the ice tops of the east to calm the warmth that the Firebird revered. Seeing the bird, the silver gales buckled in their own sorrow. The sun that the bird brought would bring forth memories of sitting atop their perch and seeing their golden twin. Before the Firebird could bring back their deathly blaze, the silver gale stood before them in the sky. They told their story, laid their history bare for the first time to prevent a future that would see their new neighbors scorched. They came to an understanding. The Firebird agreed to return not only the clear skies of the Icebird or the weather-free season of the Thunderbird, but they would act as a messenger in the skies, ferrying news of the Silver Gale's troubles and new life between the Gale and their cohorts near and far. In appreciation, the Silver Gale offered a scorching scarlet pearl to the Firebird, promising that if they were ever wounded or lost on their journeys, they would help ferry them home. Over time, these days that saw no storms would bring travelers to the new swirling islands. These adventurers would uncover the caverns beneath, and despite not a single villager ever having made the ocean their home, scryings would write themselves on the walls of the deepest caverns. They would tell the truth behind not only the Silver Gale's migration, but the relationships they would build by speaking to the souls of everything their glistening silver feathers would touch. Hi, thanks for watching my story. I know Lugia is a really popular one, so I hope I did your favourite, dragon with hands justice. Takeshi Shudo actually passed away back in 2010, so I hope I was able to respect his vision of Lugia too, as he's one of the most influential people to work on the anime ever, all while I did my best to take elements of each interpretation of Lugia and bundle it into one sloppily made baobon of a story. But I'll let you be the judge. As always, I'm not an expert on anything I talk about, just a hobbyist with an internet connection. Feel free to throw in the comments any other Pokemon stories you'd like me to dive into, and make sure to subscribe to see if I get around to it. And maybe, just maybe, we can see each other again.